Everybody, welcome back to the Coach's Log. This is Coach Rob, owner and head coach at Positive Performance Coaching, and I hope to be your coach one day. Today, I want to talk to you guys and gals about selecting a bike fitter, and this is not something that should be taken lightly. If you've never had a bike fit before as a competitive or even a recreational cyclist, you're really missing out on an opportunity to either improve performance or to stop some nagging aches and pains. And I think the thing that we forget about is that there's some knowledge that needs to be had when selecting a bike fitter. I think really the first one that you need to consider is the distance from home. There are bike fitters all over the world that you can choose from, but you want to start thinking about how close they are to you. You might be surprised that in certain parts of the United States you might have to travel a couple of hours, and if you're going to do that, you want to be prepared to make sure that you've selected the right fitter. You can look at bike fitters in really two veins: certified or experience based. And I would have to say right now, I think there are probably more than, at least in the United States, more than a half dozen different certifications for bike fitting. And some of those certifications are pretty easy to attain. You will quite often find many bike shops will have either a mechanic or someone on the sales staff that has been certified to do various types of bike fits. I'm not necessarily going to cover the merits of every one of these certifications, but I am going to say that there are many of them out there. Now, here's my problem with this, is that I have literally gone into bike shops where they've tried to sell me bike fitting services and come to find out that that person took an online course or maybe even a hands-on course and has no prior race experience or very little recreational experience, and all they have is the, let's just say it, book knowledge. What they don't have is how can we apply this to past experiences or even the experiences of other customers. So be very careful when you start to pick somebody. Yes, a certification can be a good place to start, but I would work with someone who has no certifications, that's been doing bike fitting for maybe 10 to 15 years and has no experience with certifications, but has been working with all levels of athletes for much longer. Also, look for referrals. When you do talk to these bike fitters, ask. It's like, hey, I'm coming to you as this type of cyclist. Do you have any other cyclists like me that you've worked with? And those experiences could be anything from age-related, bike fit particular problems. Maybe you're looking for someone to finally solve that weird saddle issue you're having or the reach problem that you're having. And if they tell you, yeah, we've done that many times, well, then that's great. Ask for referrals. Find out if you can speak to that customer to learn exactly what they were able to do for him or her. The other thing too is that you can get your bike fitting done in a bike shop, a fit studio, or a coach. And in all of those cases, you're going to probably find that those experiences are going to vary from one location to another. It used to be that a lot of bike shops would offer what we would call a shop fit, and if you've ever rented a bike, it's going to be very similar to that. So they're going to be looking at some very simple things. How easy is it for you to bend your elbows? How easy is it for you to extend your heel? Are you heel down, toe down? What's that look like? They're going to try to get you the most neutral position on that new bike so that you get the right size bike. So that in itself, yes, is a bike fit, but it's not what we're really looking for. Instead, what we're looking for is somebody who's going to address any kind of abnormalities, asymmetry, and that sort of thing, so that you can have the best possible injury-free experience. Fit studios are going to do that. They're going to spend a ton of time with you. Usually in a fit studio, you're looking at a bare minimum of 1 hour per bike. You could be showing up with one bike and taking their entire schedule for an entire day, or you could be taking two bikes and you could be hanging out all day or maybe a couple of days. That's how extreme this work can get. I've worked with bike fitters that have done just that. I learned how to bike fit through a person who had an insane amount of experience as a bike fitter. and also had no certifications as a bike fitter. As a matter of fact, he probably contributed to much of the documentation for those classes as well. The other thing a fit studio can probably do for you is that you might not get from a bike shop, and we're going to talk about that next, is the difference between static fits, video fits, and dynamic fits. When you start thinking about your coach, you might not be aware that many coaches will also offer bike fitting. I've had the pleasure of working with mountain bikers, cyclocross, road, gravel, and while I have not fit anyone to a specific gravel bike, I have fitted somebody, both male and female, to all other disciplines except track. And in all those cases, we've made improvements, either in comfort or in performance, or at the very least trying to deal with your typical problems around saddle sores, knee issues, flexibility issues, position issues, trying to find the fastest possible position in a time trial or road bike position, all of that stuff. Now, when I mention static or video or dynamic, quite often when you go to work with a coach, unless they have an adjunct fit studio alongside their practice, you're looking at a static fit. And that's primarily, they may be taking photographs of you and they're looking at a range of motion. They're measuring joint angles, which is an excellent place to start. I would have to say that it probably will address 80% of the challenges that you're facing. When you start looking at video, you take that a next level. Not only do you get to be able to see those joint angles, you also get to see them in action, a full range of motion. And they can start to determine where you're actually having a challenge in a pedal stroke, that sort of thing. They may even be able to pick up on other key things that happen within your body. Maybe just after 10 minutes with this new position, your shoulders start to slump, showing fatigue. And then we know that that particular position is not as effective as the prior. Then, of course, you have the dynamic bike fit. And there are a handful of these devices around. We're talking about what looks to be almost like an unfinished bike or maybe an exercise bike. They will take the measurements of you and your current bike and they apply them to this, what looks like a bike jig. And then all of a sudden, this bike jig transforms into more or less the same position of what you have currently. And then you get on that bike and adjustments are made. A range of motion can be captured through camera, and it can also have spin data to look at what's going on with your pedal stroke, power data, speed, cadence. All of this information is applied. It is as it says, it's dynamic. It's capturing you as it occurs. So that's another great way of doing this. And as you can imagine, as you go from a static fit in a bike shop or from a coach fit to more of a video analysis, maybe from also a bike shop or a coach, to a full fit studio where you're getting a dynamic fit, or in some cases bike shops that have dynamic fitting, then yes, you're going to pay for more. Now, the beauty about dynamic bike fitting is that those measurements can be saved. And when you come back for an additional session, maybe you're getting a tune-up, maybe you're addressing something that didn't quite go right, they can quickly make those adjustments. It's not one of these things that it takes hours to do, but minutes. So you can save time on the back end. The other thing, too, that you want to be aware of when you're looking at a bike fitter, your coach, if he or she is just doing a typical coach fitting solution where they're doing static, maybe a couple of camera shots to check joint angles, when they can't really trust a goniometer, which is a gauge that measures joint angles, then you might find that they don't have ready access to spares. Maybe they find that, the reach on your bike is just too much and you need a shorter stem or a different set of bars. Maybe the bars are too wide for your shoulders, or maybe you would benefit from a narrower bar. That kind of thing is not necessarily going to be easy for a coach to accomplish. They can certainly tell you what parts to get, and they may be willing to help you install those after the fact. The other thing, too, is mechanical experience and certification as a mechanic. You would hope to think that in a bike shop that you would have some UCI certified mechanics on staff, or at least those that have some experience with mechanical aptitude working on your bike, but that's not always the case. I would definitely caution you, if you go into this and you see that they want to change out. Maybe it's not even that they want to give you a new set of bars or stems, but they're just going to loosen the stem faceplate and rotate your bars a little bit. Okay, fine. But if they show up with just a torque, with an Allen key or another wrench, and that's all they're doing, I would think twice about that, because if they're not showing up with a torque wrench and applying the proper pressure to those bolts, you could break precious carbon fiber parts. And even if you're only running alloy bars and stems, I still would not trust anything unless a torque wrench was involved. The other thing too is that, once again, certification. A lot of the mechanic certifications that are out there, some of them come directly from the manufacturer. Like, if that bike shop only sells that particular brand, then they would probably go through that bike manufacturer's training. So if you show up to that bike shop to get a fit and you don't own one of their bikes, I would still say that the vast majority of the knowledge that mechanic carries is probably going to be fine and go towards your bike. But once again, if they show up without carrying a torque wrench in their back pocket, then I would not be working with them. And then there's the argument for DIY. And yeah, you heard me. There are some solutions where you can do your own bike fit at home. And it's going to require software. It's going to require some knowledge. So you're going to have to educate yourself on those optimal ranges of motion or joint angles. You're also going to have to understand why they're optimal. And then you need to be able to have the space where you can take a photograph of the left side of you, the right side of you, your front on profile, and maybe even your rear profile as you ride a bike. So you better have some good video skills. You better have, the ability to utilize these applications. And I'll try to put some links in. There's a couple of them that are pretty decent, and I'll make sure to add those into the show notes. Okay, everybody, that's all the time that I have for today. If you are curious about this, I guess the last thing to add to it is there is such a thing as virtual fit. And that's when a coach typically will walk you through exactly how to set up your camera, take video of the left, the right, the front, and the rear, so that you can actually get a decent set of suggestions from a coach from any distance. There are some that do this and others that don't. I offer it to those folks that I coach. There's really no money involved. It's something that I do for most of my athletes. It's not a short process. It takes some back and forth to make some changes, and not everybody does that. They prefer to have the hands-on, and I understand. So that's one of those other services that we offer our athletes. Okay, everybody, have a great rest of your training week, and we will talk again very soon.